Hello, friends, and welcome back to Live Reality Games, a network of creators making our favorite shows into reality. Once again, Kirk. Apologies to anyone who's tuning in to see your best friend Kirk. I love Kirk. He's not going to make it, but we have hopefully a good show for you here. I'm here with my good friend Brandon, the host and creator of Can You Survive, a charity event, a survivor like charity event that takes place in the summers in Maine. Season two, season 2022 is coming up later this year. So tune into Live Reality Games for breakdowns. Tune into the Can You Survive Facebook pages for the live feeds, and potentially follow the YouTube page at some point for some episodes. If I'm maybe not talking tales outside of school. But welcome, Brandon. How you doing?
Thanks. I'm great. And obviously, if you watch the live streams, you'll see Cam there too, because he is also a host of Can You Survive?
I'm there. I'm there in spirit. A different version of me. I play a character
Right.
while I'm out there yelling at them at tribal council. But
Right.
yeah, Brandon, what can you tease the audience with a little bit for what's to come this year in terms of 22?
So we have a really big cast. So that's the first thing is it's insane. And I'm sure people playing are gonna be like gross. But we just couldn't say no. But I just counted, we have 26 challenges planned for this year. A lot of challenges in 5 days. We have some fun stuff planned. Not really a lot of twists because I don't really like twists. But we have some fun stuff planned. We have something that we'll tease later when we talk about the episode a little bit. That yeah, we have lots of stuff, fun stuff planned.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah. I mean, if you guys haven't had a chance to check out some of the live feeds from last year, I really recommend it. For people who are looking for a game to play maybe next summer. I mean, this is one of the best that I've seen ever put on. I think in terms of the challenges, I mean, Brandon is making these by hand, and when he says 26 challenges, they're not just easy peasy things. They're big set pieces. They're amazing handcrafted puzzles, and a lot of them are pulled directly from the show, either the Australian show or the U.S. show. So I just want to shout that out as well.
Well, thanks. One thing I do want to note that I didn't say before was obviously it's a charity event, and that's like a big aspect of it. So I was looking at what we had made our first year, and in total we made over 10,000. But we didn't make most of it until 2 weeks before the event. So 2 weeks prior to the event, I had sent everyone a message saying, "We're at 4,000, woohoo!" And they literally raised 6,000 in 2 weeks. We are
That's
already
insane.
past this year. We're already past the 4,000 mark, and we have 3 months until the event. So we are way ahead of where we were last year. So I'm so excited to see how much the players raise this year because
Yeah.
I definitely intend it to be more.
And so, I mean, the unique thing, yeah, about this is that the players are raising money, and where they place it, it'll go to their charity. So I think we ended up with a little over 10,000 last year. I hope that we can hit, let's shoot for 12, maybe 15 this year if we're feeling greedy. Not greedy though, obviously it's for
Right.
charity. Um, but yeah, is there? I know that it generally comes through the each individual player because they're trying to raise the most money. But is there a place that the viewers can go if they just want to generally send a donation to the total fund, to add some money to that pot?
Yeah, we have on our Instagram page, on the Can You Survive Instagram page, the link on there is our GoFundMe account, so you can donate on there. We also have a Venmo, which is at Can You Survive. Pretty easy. Um, and those are two ways that you can donate. If you know a player in the game, you can leave their name as a comment, and it'll go towards their fundraising goals.
Great. Well, if you're watching and you're feeling generous, it all goes to great causes. I mean, there were some amazing causes last year. I'm excited to find out what everyone's playing for this year. I mean, really, it is putting the do you want to know what you're playing for into the do you want to know what you're playing for. I love that aspect of it. So please, if you have some extra money and want to throw it to a good cause, this is a great way to do it. And then I also, if you want to play, I think next year you've already announced one of the themes. Is that correct? You teased that a little bit.
I did on Valentine's Day. So next year we're doing 2 seasons in a row, back to back. So it'll be 1 full week of CYS, 2 games in a row in that 1 week. We're gonna die. We died last year with 4 days, so I'm already like anticipating how many times I'm gonna cry this year with 5 days. But yes, we're doing 2 seasons. The first one, I don't know order wise what they're gonna be, but one of them is gonna be Blood versus Water. We had some pairs apply this year, and I was like, oh my god, we need to like hold off and just do Blood versus Water. I
Yeah.
love the idea of doing it.
I mean, it's such an amazing, part of it. I know last year we had the kind of the undercover couple in
Yeah.
the game, but I think having it be kind of an overt part of the game really changes it. And also for people applying, I think it's a really cool opportunity to, do something life changing. I mean, we've both played one of these games or multiple of these games, and do something life changing with someone that you love or someone that you care about is a crazy experience. So I think that's an awesome way to. Awesome. I also want to give a shout out. I know we had potentially um, planned to do this as a joint Maine podcast with our friends at Surviving Maine. So both Brandon and I have. If you haven't seen that season, go check it out on YouTube. They put together one of the best YouTube series from a live reality game that I had ever seen. So go check that out. And Brandon, you're going to be helping them out this year. So can you give us a little bit of info on when and where people can tune in for that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go down at the end of this month to help out. It's Memorial Weekend. I think that's the holiday at the end of the month. So it's that weekend. It's a Friday through Monday. They don't live stream it, so they'll unless you're in Maine and you want to come to the actual location to watch, which you can. The info is on the Surviving Maine page. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for the episodes to come out, which Taylor is editing them again, so they'll be great. And just seeing the emails that she sent to the volunteers, they learned a lot last year, so I'm excited to see how it comes out this year,
Yeah.
because of all of the stuff that they kind of learned while filming our season.
Yeah, so season two, the one that we were in, was the first one that they had filmed, and I mean, it came out amazing. But obviously, you learn a lot, and with 2 years to plan because of COVID, I hope
Right.
they're approaching it. They've probably been planning and coming up with new things, new ways to approach things, and I'm sure those episodes are going to be amazing. If you are in Maine, I know Liza, who hosts it, is probably always looking for volunteers. So if you want to go down and help out, you can figure that out. Or if you just want to watch, I know they had a spot for spectators last time. I assume they'll be doing the same thing. If you want to go down and check it out, I'm sure they would appreciate that. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Those are all the plugs out at the beginning. Now we can dive into Survivor. So if you are not interested in what we're talking about, now we'll dive into Survivor. We'll do our little know-it-alls impression, although spoilers for something, one of us actually has won it, so at least hopefully we might be a little bit better than the actual know-it-alls in that sense. So all right, so going into Survivor, Brandon, what were your thoughts after the last episode, in terms of kind of not just about obviously that powerful tribal council, but more on kind of where the game sat after, as we headed into kind of the final 8 here? Where were you seeing, kind of where did you feel like the game was leading?
Well, I feel like you can't really talk about it unless you do talk about the powerful tribal council, and I feel like that totally flipped everything on its head. I feel like leading up to that tribal, Lindsay was like, okay, I don't really want to work with Jonathan. I don't want to work with Jonathan anymore, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to tribal council and it's just like, okay, Jonathan put his foot in his mouth. Like, I feel like that whole
Putting it
episode
nicely,
was
yeah.
the downfall of Jonathan. And I think you said it before. I think you said it in a chat somewhere, where like you've never seen someone go from like up here to down here so quickly in one episode.
I don't know if
So
I said that.
you
I
didn't.
don't know if that was me.
So, someone said it.
That's all right.
It's fine.
Yeah, he really
Anyway.
did have kind of a, I'm in control of it. I'm feeling good. I am really running the thing. Uh, to kind of a pretty low, you know, both potentially, morally and in the game itself, kind of losing control. And we saw that sort of play out here in this episode as we kind of saw Lindsay start to lose trust in Jonathan. Omer start to lose faith in kind of, does Jonathan really have enough up here to warrant kind of playing with him? So we kind of saw some of the fallout of that. Obviously, having those two idols leave the game is big, but I think both Marianne and Drea, seemed reinvigorated almost a little bit coming into this episode as well, which is kind of a interesting play from that. So let's dive into the episode. So it starts with, this episode, a big part of this episode was the weather. Torrential downpour. We finally starting to see that Fijian spring or early summer kind of come into play here, as they're really getting hit with this rain. And it looks, to me, that looks so uncomfortable. And it was a big theme throughout the episode. And I'm just curious, Brandon, we didn't get much bad weather when we were out in Maine, which was lucky. But are you much of a camper? Like, how would you handle something like this? Do you think this would affect you big time?
Yeah, I feel like looking at it, you can just say, "Oh, I could do it." But as literally every season when it rains, someone has a confessional that says, "I could." I always say I could do it when I watch it on TV because it's only 2 minutes. But you're actually sitting through it for hours. Yeah, I would be freezing. I think that's the biggest
Yeah,
thing. Is like it would be so cold. Because
yeah.
you'd be so wet.
I think Romeo got a couple of those confessionals tonight, and he said things like, like I think what he said that really hit me is just, excuse me, you're sitting with those wet clothes, but then the wind hits you, and he says, it's like ice knives like stabbing you is how he described it. And I
Mm,
really do think that is, um you know uh, an underrated part of it is just that wind factor. Like, yeah, it's fine, it's being wet, it's being in the cold, and you're shivering, but when that wind hits, it's just, I think that saps all kind of like resilience out of
yeah.
you.
And was this
um
like the first time this season really it's been bad weather?
At
It's
least that
been
they've focused on it in the
right.
show. Yeah, I think this is the first time it's hit them. I know roughly, having read online kind of the like weather pattern of the like Fijian summer is that it's kind of like calm, then you hit the rain period, which is normally the end of that first season, beginning of the second season, and then the
Mm,
second season towards the end tends to be okay. So you tend to see in these even seasons, the kind of the first seasons here, that rain hit towards the end of the season. So I think we're going to have a lot of it to come, and it's going to be a hard final 8 or however many days are left for them.
right.
So we kind of have the fallout from both tribal councils, which is fun to kind of see. So we had High coming back. It's that first group of 5 coming back from that first tribal council, and he's sitting there, kind of like preening, really happy. He says, it went exactly the way I wanted. I wanted Roxroy out of there. I got him out of there. I did this. This went the way that I wanted it to happen, which is something that, viewers will remember. The last time I was on 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was saying, hey, these aren't going the way High wants. These tribal councils are going Omer's way or Mike's way. Other people are running the ship, and it seems like we're getting a lot of confessionals of High saying, "Hey, I want to do this," and then something else happens at tribal council. So it's interesting that this
Yeah.
time it was finally him steering that ship. And I wonder, Brandon, did you feel like, part of me at least thinks that he wanted Roxroy almost out of spite of like, I want to make a decision that gets, and he forced it a little bit too hard because he wasn't getting heard earlier. I
Right.
don't know if that's just me. Did you feel that at all last episode?
So I feel like since the merge pretty much we've seen like High getting one of the last confessionals before tribal council, and it's always like this is where the big players come out and make decisions, and then it doesn't go his way. And like it yeah, I feel like it's not gone his way literally the entire merge. And then yeah, I mean I could see it that he would just like go with it because he thinks other people would go with it. Um yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely seemed, at least, this could be revisionist history a little bit, because we hear now Mike and Omer kind of talk about how, at least from Mike's perspective, he felt very pressured into that vote. So he felt, hey, High put his foot down, forced me really into that vote, and I didn't like that. I'm Mike. I gave my word to Roxroy. I feel really bad about doing that vote. Now I'm mad at High. And he tells this to Omer. Omer perfectly plays it from a social perspective,
Mhm.
right into it, and says, you know what, I feel that, Mike. I was okay with either side. I'm just really upset that you feel upset about this. And is really just noticing, hey, if Mikey no likey, which is which is what Omer's quote was. I love that quote from Omer. If Mikey no likey, I can bring Mike in and kind of put this wedge in between High and him, because him and High have been together since day one. Mike's obviously a powerful player that Omer wants, and I thought this was just a great move to kind of potentially build that connection moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've seen Omar play like the best social game this season by far.
It seems
Um,
like everyone's coming to him, yeah, and we see later. I mean, we'll get to it when we get to the scramble, but it seemed like even in the scramble, and he's starting to acknowledge it. I am the person that everyone's coming to. I Omer am the person that people are coming to and saying, I only trust you. What do you want to do? And I think
mhm,
that's the place that you really need to be, in Survivor.
right.
So we have the second group comes back. We get a great confessional from Drea. I mean, she's down, but she's not out. She has her arsenal of things to go. She lost an idol, but
Right.
she still
She
has,
still has so much
yeah,
stuff.
like she's still got a say. So it's not as if the war is lost by any means. So I think she's regrouping and trying to approach this in a good way. We get to the next morning. It's day 18, and Lindsay goes to Omer and spills the beans on Jonathan. Just says, "Oh, good, this idiot," essentially, like, and explains. I mean, the thing that we saw play out on the episode last week, which is just him not at all understanding the consequences of what flushing an idol means. Hey, it's all
Right.
well and great to flush an idol, but if the decoy vote is your ally, that's not a good plan, and it's
Right.
kind of baffling to me, to see that. And Lindsay's in a really interesting position where she's tied to Jonathan, who isn't a great strategist. So, Brandon, I guess I want to throw this to you. Like, not that I don't want to throw anyone under the bus from maybe surviving Maine or anything like that, but I guess I'm curious how you would handle working with someone who you don't feel like maybe is on the same strategic level as you, even though they maybe want to steer the ship, they're not capable of it.
Mm. Um, I mean, I feel like Lindsay played it well. Like she talked to people about she tried to drive a wedge between them because she knew the perception was there of those two being a pair or at least close working together. So I mean, at least starting the conversation of like, oh, I don't want to work with Jonathan and like anymore. And she's starting that like wedge. Um, I honestly can't. It's been so long. I can't think of anyone from Surviving Maine who would fit this. But yeah, I was trying to think while you were asking. Like, oh God, I don't know. I don't know an example. Um, but I mean, I feel like she played it well.
I
Uh,
think so too, and Jonathans don't grow on trees, so there's not always going to be a one-to-one example of someone like that. But I think it's interesting. I mean, it's just like, I think that is a classic kind of Survivor thing, and we've seen that. Maybe that's like another thing similar to Rock Story, almost that throwback to old school Survivor, where you kind of have this person who might be in control for various reasons, but isn't the strategist. I feel like a lot in the 20s and the 30s, we see the strategists are in control. Um,
mhm,
and it's rare that we see someone in power who isn't the strategist, and the people around them really have to deal with that. And I think that's an interesting dynamic.
yeah,
Um, we then have the idol hunt. So the idols are played, and at least one of them is going to be rehidden by the bylaws of Survivor. We know probably something's out there. So we have Lindsay taking a look. We get the Survivor, like kind of hovering on it with the highlight. She gets the dummy music and walks away from it and doesn't find it, unfortunately. Then we have a little, two things that I thought were interesting from an editing perspective. One, Marianne, they're trying to start fires, right? Because it just rained, and Marianne declares it a fire making competition. I neglected to write down who the two people were trying to create fire in that scene, but maybe someone watching or someone commenting can remind me. I know one of them was Jonathan. I don't know if it was High or someone else in the episode, but that could be a hint to maybe, a future fire making scenario. She calls it a fire making competition and then goes to look for firewood. And while she's looking for firewood, she finds the idol. So Marianne was without an idol for maybe 13 hours. So she's back on top. She's feeling in it. She has her own idol. This one doesn't come as what she's. There's no bunny rabbits or mailboxes with this one. She just has it. There's no beware, which I think is great. So
Oh,
Marianne
thank God.
the extra vote and an idol now that no one knows about. I think that's interesting
Mm.
because everyone knew about Drea's idol, everyone knew about Marianne's idol, and everyone knew about Mike's idol. She's now the first person in this game with an idol that no one knows about. So I mean, where do you think Marianne can go forward in this game with something like that? Because she is someone who has been quote unquote on the outs. So do you think like where do you think she can go from here?
I mean, I think she at the beginning of the game, she was a little spastic, but I feel like as the game's gone, she's gotten better. And I feel like not just the way she's playing, we also have to look at the edit, and I feel like the edit started the game as a very like, oh my god, player. And it's slowly gotten more, I don't want to say strategic, but she's gotten more like sound and more like level-headed a little bit as the game's gone. So I do feel like she has potential to use it to her benefit,
Yeah, I mean,
possibly.
I
And
I definitely think so.
I really, just because of the constant shit talking that Jonathan does of Marianne, I really, really want Marianne to be the reason that Jonathan gets voted out somehow.
Yeah,
So
I think that would be interesting. I mean, we had kind of the rivalry between Roxroy and Tori, and it kind of came to almost like an unsatisfying conclusion last week. Obviously, they both got voted out at separate tribal councils,
separate
same
tribals,
episode, but they didn't even get to kind of go after each other in the way that I feel like
right?
the editing was leading it. But we do have this kind of undertone of yeah, Jonathan versus Marianne in a certain extent, and we're starting to see it now. Lindsay versus Jonathan as well, which was kind of added throughout this episode. We had a commenter. Sorry, apologies to the commenters because I was on the wrong tab on the screen, so I didn't see them before. But we have a commenter who is letting us know it was High versus Jonathan in the fire making. So obviously, with the result of this episode, that's not going to be a future plan. But I do think maybe the
Right.
concept of Jonathan making fire making could be something that they're hinting at there.
I feel like
Um,
that's such a bad idea. Like,
yeah,
knowing
I
that fire making is happening as a challenge, unless you're deliberately going to lose this like pretend challenge, why are you doing a fire making challenge for fun?
oh, I mean, I think they were just all I think it had rained. I think they were just all just trying to work, as many people as possible. They probably have three flints from the three different camps, and so it's as many people as possible. Just let's get fire going. But yeah, I mean, I think from a strategic standpoint, yeah, if I were out there in a real game of Survivor, I don't think I would ever touch the fire. I know when we were out in Surviving Maine, it was a fun thing to do and it was fun to be around the fire. I think if
Right,
I were out on real Survivor, I'm never touching that fire. I don't want anyone to know that I
right,
know how to make fire or what fire is. I'm scared of the fire. You know what I don't know how
right.
you would approach it.
I mean, as you know, I can't make fire with flint. So I think it would depend if I ever learned. If I tried to do it on the island, I would have to learn.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So we have now, that's the commercial break. We turn our attentions now to the reward challenge. So it's still torrential downpouring. We get a couple fun shots of the eight of them all shivering. It looks like Marianne is gonna shiver to death there. Lindsay looks pretty bad. Romeo's looking pretty bad. I think we get a pretty funny shot then of Mike, who's just like absolutely stock still, as if this has never impacted him at all. Uh, so I thought that was fun. Jeff says today's going to be fun. A lot of the other challenges were hard. This one's easy. It's just getting through a short obstacle course and throwing a beanbag onto a pole, getting it to land on a pole. And the reward is huge. hot pizza. Everyone loves that Fijian pizza. We got cold beer, and we got the biggest thing to me, which is the overnight shelter. You got pillows, you got
Oh yeah.
blankets, you got shelter. This is a huge reward, and I think, especially in this moment, I mean, Survivor couldn't have timed it more perfectly.
Right.
The people who claim this is filmed on a set in LA are going to be talking about the rain machines were working at the right moment. Um, as we know, it's real, and they happen to time it correctly. But can you speak to kind of the power of a reward of that sense, emotional standpoint, from a bonding standpoint? I mean, what do you think that means to the players?
Oh my god, I feel like it would be huge, especially that it's pouring down rain, and you get to sleep in a bed. Like, that would be huge. It's like, especially because of the elements that are happening currently. That just makes it even better. And I feel like a night away, I feel like this is where I admit that I haven't watched the episode. Did they have a night away? I know.
Brandon.
I went a really long time just like not
We were gonna
admitting
see
it.
how long we could go without Brandon
Yeah.
announcing that he hasn't seen the whole episode. He did watch the last 10 to 15 minutes, but missed the beginning of the
I
episode.
missed everything else.
I think you did pretty good. This
Thank
is
you.
this is yeah. So they did have a night away. They got to
Okay.
spend the night away in the camp, or in this the cabana. They called it the Survivor Sanctuary. I think they used the same name
Yeah.
last season. So they got to spend that night away. I mean, to me, I think that night away, not only the night away, but having the bed, having the blankets, having the food, the drinks. I think I mean I can talk to it. I mean, and I think you can talk to it of just even just in 4 days when we were out in Maine, you're stuck in the game. Whether you're sitting there with
Mhm.
people, whether you're looking at the fire, whether you're doing anything, you're stuck in the game. And I
Yeah.
think there's something to be said about just having a little bit of sense of comfort, being
Yeah.
able to shut that part of you off. And we'll talk about the strategy obviously happened at that, at that reward, but being able to kind of just feel human almost is so it's invaluable a little bit.
Right. Yeah, totally. What was I gonna say? Uh, yes, I agree. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, no, that's all right. I think this would be a good time to maybe tease the thing that we were talking about before too.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this season CYS is 5 days long, and we wanted to add some like extra fun elements because it is that extra day. So we are having a getaway reward. So I found a really fun, I'm not gonna say what it is. I really found a really fun reward that's near where our site is. So we'll be taking the reward winners off site to do a really fun Maine experience. And
That's amazing. I mean,
what
yeah,
we'll
don't
say.
give away too much. The players
Yeah.
will have to earn it and play for it. The viewers will have to wait and see what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, you revealed this to me and some of the other production members, maybe last week or the week before, and immediately I fell in love with the idea. I mean, it seems so simple, but maybe something, and the live reality games fans can correct me if I'm wrong. Something that either isn't done often enough or hasn't really been done at all in these live reality games. Um, I think oftentimes for many good reasons. I mean, it's not cost effective, not time effective to get people off site and doing something
Yeah.
real, but just to give those players a sense of real life, take them out of the game into a real life scenario. I just think is completely game changing for those players and for how everyone stuck at camp's going to feel. Because in this scenario, we have people who win and people who lose, and I think that's the thing that um, with every reward. I think last time I was on, we were talking about Tori, who mentioned, I want to be with the losers. They're going to be bitter and
Yeah.
talking. But there's also the strategy of I want to be with the winners. They're going to be happy and talking. So both sides are going to be playing, and I think what you have set up there is going to be really fun for the players involved.
And I feel like going back to what this episode, I personally I would be on Tori's side. I wouldn't want to win. Because like in Surviving Maine, I did win a reward challenge and it was scary having to stand there and choose. It was as little as whoopie pies, but I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? How do I choose who gets whoopie pies? So like I would rather be on the loser side than the winner side in any kind of reward because they always, more often than not, I feel like they give more players to the losing side than they do to the winner side. And
Right.
we saw that with this episode, it was
Tonight it
three to
was 5 and
five.
3. Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah, and as someone who didn't get a whoopie pie, I should have held it against you and voted you out.
I know
Uh,
I didn't choose literally anyone in our alliance.
I mean that's part of it. Yeah, I mean I think the losing side. I think while I mean I think there's benefits to being on both sides because I think being in that smaller group. So let me run through it quickly. So we have the challenge. For whatever reason, they start 15 feet in the water, so they're up to their chest in the water. They have to run out of the water. I don't know why they did that other than to torture them a tiny.
May-
It seemed
may-
really silly. Then they run through the obstacle, or they climb through the little obstacle course. They got to do one of those over and under type of things. They get to the sandbag. They carry the sandbag on the pole across the balance beam, and then they toss it. So Jonathan, obviously the first through the obstacle course. We have High and Lindsay right behind him. Drea makes it there. At this point, we have about the four of them tossing sandbags. We see High's going underhand with the sandbags. We see Drea's not getting anywhere within. She's playing COVID with with the landmark. She's giving it 6 feet of space. She's not getting anywhere close to it. It was a terrible joke. And
Absolutely.
Omer makes it, and we have the dramatic music. Jonathan lands, falls off. Next scene, obviously, Lindsay lands and it sticks. We get the flourish music, and Lindsay is our champion. Jeff specifically says you get to choose one person. That's
Uh-huh.
classic Jeff line. You get to choose one
Right.
person. She goes and she chooses Omer, which I think it's an obvious choice for multiple reasons, but she talks it out. She says, I want to pick someone who hasn't been on a reward at all. Um, Omer hasn't been on a reward. Also, one of her for her day one alliance members. So Omer
Right.
is an obvious one.
Yeah.
Omer walks over and she looks at Jeff, and says, "Can I please choose a second?" As if there was ever any doubt that she was
Right.
going to get to go with three. I mean, there's 8 people left. You're obviously getting two people. It's obviously going
Right.
to be 3 and 5. 3 and 5 makes the most sense.
Yeah.
2 and 6 is ridiculous. And 4 and 4 would be too many, I think. So three
Yeah.
is obviously what you're getting out of this.
Yeah.
She gets the second one, and she not even no hesitation picks Mike, which I thought was an interesting one. I wasn't sure kind of about their connection before this. I mean, have you had any hints kind of before this of a Lindsay and Mike connection?
I mean, to be honest, we haven't really gotten much from Lindsay in general. So
Yeah, I
like
agree.
in terms of gameplay, other than being with the four orange, we really haven't gotten much from Lindsay. Um she was my winner pick before the season, so like I'm kind of hoping that
Maybe it's a late season
She gets
surge
an
and
Erica
Erica.
at
Yeah.
it, but like I'm not hopeful. But I am glad that we're seeing everyone knows I didn't watch it, but I'm glad that she got a little bit more this episode. Just in terms of like what she is thinking outside of the orange.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting her to pick Marianne. I mean, I think in the
Yeah.
moment she got a second choice. I was really expecting her to pick Marianne. I know she was upset with Jonathan. Marianne made the most sense to me. I could have maybe seen a Drea. I know she's had a few scenes with Drea. Um, Picking Mike was interesting, and it made me think about a few things. I mean, there's the underreported kind of Hoboken, New Jersey connection between the two of them, right?
Yeah.
I think they're both New Jerseyites.
Yep.
I don't know if that's what they prefer to be called, but I think that's maybe an underreported connection that we didn't explore before. And then just
Right.
another feather in the cap for both Omer and Mike, who I think are both playing probably the two most social games. It's so
Absolutely.
obvious. I mean, and it's exemplified by them both being chosen for this reward. Whoever
Yep.
won that award, probably at least one of them was being picked out of the, like I can't
Right.
see. I'm trying to think any of the 8 of them win, one of them at least is on that reward, and if not both of
Yep.
them most of the time.
Yeah. And it was smart. Like if Lindsay wants to steer clear of Jonathan a little bit, if Jonathan and Mike are really close, choosing Mike is good. In terms of like if she decides to vote out Jonathan, at least she's close to Mike. Um, to potentially still have an option.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I mean, if she's feeling like she needs to get rid of Jonathan or knows that Jonathan's not in an end game plan, I don't think he's in many people's end game plan. It's time to
yeah.
start picking the other people. So yeah, I think that's a really
Yeah.
good point of when you get to this point, I mean, final 8 is a really delicate time of the game. I mean, I think from final 9 to final 6 is really where you are picking that end game, because once you get to final 6, to me at least, I feel like the game is almost already predetermined for you in a little bit. There are the winners and there are the losers at that stage already.
Yeah.
And it's really about just building that combination of hopefully I can beat two of these people.
Right.
But before that, you need to build that kind of, you need to, it's like making a recipe, right? You need to like put a little bit of this in there, a little bit of that in there, and make sure you don't put the poison in there. And the poison might be Jonathan in this scenario, So it's like you can't let Jonathan get too close. You can't let him get to that final six. So if you know he's out, who's going to be in? And maybe for
Yeah.
her, that's the Mike.
Yeah.
So we then get a quick scene back at camp. So we have the sad people in the rain. Everyone's still there. They decide it's raining. They're fixing that shelter. We get a little bit of story from High here, and I think this was for people that love the edit and follow the edit. This was kind of the death knell in my opinion for High. I felt like that it was coming for a couple weeks, but this was definitely it.
Hmm.
He gets the package right here, and it's talking about his tough childhood. He's a child of immigrants, coming from I believe he said Vietnam, and he can handle this rain because he knows what it's like to have almost nothing, and he can fight through these tough times knowing that there's going to be better times, knowing that the game is finite. There's only 8 days left, or however many. Little does he know he only has 24 hours to sit through it.
Right.
But he's able to do it, and I thought that was an interesting perspective into High, because I don't think we had learned much about his background. He's this strong character. I really liked High's character this season. He is
Hmm.
take no nonsense, do this. And I think it was an interesting piece of his background. How have you felt about High this season? I mean,
Oh my god, he was one of my favorites. Like,
yeah,
period. I loved Ty all season.
yeah. To me, High was this season's Shan, and I don't know if that
Mm,
resonates. Just someone who is so powerful too early, but in a way that's such great television. High
yeah.
had those moments, going to rocks, kind of definitely was like strategically powerful in the early merge, and in the late kind of pre-merge. In the same way, maybe not as powerful as Shan. Obviously, Shan did some
Right.
absolutely insane things
Yeah.
in the pre-merge, but I think it was kind of that same character type of, hey, I've become too big too fast to the point where once you get to the merge, they're just too easy of a target type of thing.
Right.
But from a character standpoint, love the both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we get High's story. High, before people start leaving for the reward, does throw out Romeo's name. So he's talking to Lindsay. Lindsay says, "Who are you thinking?" He says Romeo. First name out of his mouth is Romeo. Don't love that. Love my boy Romeo. But then he says
Really?
I I do love my. You don't like Romeo?
I
What are your thoughts on
don't.
Romeo?
I don't. I haven't liked him the whole season. I don't know why. I don't really have a reason. But like, he also's never been on the right side of the votes. Like maybe once. But like what? Ugh, I don't know. What happened? Something happened between him and Drea
I
at
need
the
to know.
merge.
I need to
And
know. Yeah,
I need to know what happened
they
because
didn't show it enough because
no.
all pre-merge, he was built to be, in my opinion, they set up each tribe with a strategic mastermind. It was Romeo, it was Omer, it was High, on the three tribes, right? And they had, their sidekicks. High had Mike, who's a big player. Romeo had Drea, and Omer probably had either Marianne or Jonathan, depending on how the edit was playing. But those were the 6 to 7 main characters, right? And then we get to the merge, and Romeo is just absolutely out of
Disappears.
everything, and
Right.
disappears, is left out of that majority. I agree. I have no idea what happened in that scenario. I do like what Romeo gives me from a character perspective, and that's probably the difference between us. I like that style of kind of just like he's a little bit fed up with the people out there, which I like. I don't love when I don't love the like kind of I love everyone out here. I'm so excited to meet everyone. Sometimes I kind of like that character that's like, oh my god, these people are just I'm just
Awful.
so sick of these people. Sometimes I like that
Yeah.
personality, and I liked his kind of. I think he had just some early moments in that blue tribe. I liked how he was approaching it strategically. That I am still rooting for him, and I'm curious where that goes. But yeah, so I'm a Romeo fan, a
Okay.
Romeo stan. So yeah, so he says Romeo's name, and we get the kind of bigger moment here is that he kind of just teases the concept of, well, if Jonathan loses, what happens here? And Lindsay jumps on it. She says, if Jonathan, she's like, yeah, if Jonathan's losing, I'm not feeling good about him right now. And we get that kind of culmination of like what you said earlier, what was happening in that last episode of,
Yeah.
hey, is Jonathan who I want to be with? No, I need to start driving a clear wedge between me and him so that people don't think that we are a pair. And I'm willing to let him go. We in that sorry, I also want to note that this is the first time all game we've heard about the potential of Jonathan going on an immunity run. High brings this up and says, hey, he could win them all. He could go to the end. This is the first time we've heard about that. Obviously, as fans, I feel like we've been talking about it since even before the season started, just looking at but this is the first time we've heard the players actually talk about it. So, excuse me, I'm curious how much that picks up speed after this episode, because I just think, he got votes this episode. I feel like he's the archetype that he's going to get votes whether he's the decoy or the actual vote every episode here on out. So we're if he's not immune.
I'm kind of feeling a a 0 vote finalist situation.
I could see him. Yeah, I maybe not 0 vote finalist. To me, I think right now my prediction is he loses fire. But we're gonna get to that later, Brandon, because I have a little game set up for us.
Great.
So we'll get to your predictions later.
Okay.
All right. So now we're on the reward with the group of people. They're diving into the pizza. Mike says he lives on pizza. Obviously, as a New Jersey guy, he wants to eat pizza until it comes out of his ears. And then we hear what sounds like words from God start coming. It's just mumbled voices from a speaker coming, and we find out, it is a family. It's not visit, but videos and pictures. So they get you didn't. It was set up really cool. They're in the shack. There's like kind of wood and debris kind of set up as like a faux wall almost, and they're projecting a slideshow on that. And we get videos. We get Lindsay's family. I think it was her parents and sister. We get Omer's girlfriend. We get Mike's wife. They all give like a brief message. We see them tear up. We see how that kind of bonds them together.
Yeah, I
And
was
then
gonna say,
immediately,
like, on top of the good reward, you also have that. Like, that's even more bonding between the three of them.
Even more bonding, and even more. I wonder they don't show it in the episode, and I doubt they'll ever show it. How they approach that with the rest of the group? Do they say that, or do they keep that to themselves? Is that something I would almost be, if I were out there, I would almost say to the other guys, like, we can't ever say that this happened. Like they're gonna hate us. They're gonna hate us. It's raining. It's pouring. Everyone's upset. I might never. I would want no one to ever know that we got that reward.
Yeah. No, absolutely not.
So then we start the game talk, which I think, the slideshow opens up the game talk. Everyone's bonded, everyone's loving each other, they're hugging, they're kissing. Mike's kissing foreheads out there. Everyone's feeling great. And Omer is starting the game talk, and he says, "Mike, I really like you. I think we've had this connection of just like we really get along since the merge. We just really get along. The only problem we've had strategically is that I feel like I have to go through a middle person to talk to you." And Mike's like, yeah, like I think High has been that kind of middle person for us. I talk to High, you talk to him. And Omer says that High called Mike his puppet. So Omer says, High has told me, the reason why I'm talking to High is because High says, hey, I can control Mike's vote. He's my puppet. Immediately then cuts to a confessional where he tells us this is a lie, which I thought was amazing. This is an amazing lie.
Right.
And he says, Mike eats it up. He says, this really makes a lot of sense. What you're telling me makes a lot of sense. And Omer smugly to the camera goes, I knew he was going to eat it up because you tell a good lie, not a stupid lie. And I just want to hear you expound upon that quote. You tell a good lie, not a stupid lie. When you were out there, playing these games, whether you've played online or you've played live, I mean, I think that is maybe one of the most key sentences that I might have heard all season from a Survivor player.
Yeah, I mean, it was the episode title.
Is that the episode title? I did
not
know that. Okay, I didn't.
I didn't watch it, but I'm looking at the Wikipedia page as we talk so that I can at least get an idea of what happened. Yeah, I mean, that's really important. If someone doesn't believe you're alive, then you're fucked. So, like, that's a super important thing to.
I mean, but are you thinking? I mean, like I don't know. I mean, knowing the type of player you are, I think you were
Mhm.
mostly upfront with a lot of people out there. But I mean, when you are telling lies, I mean, it's a lot about that. Reading the person and giving them what they want, right?
Right.
And I think that that's where sometimes bad survivor players can get in trouble, is that
Yeah.
they're telling a lie from their own perspective, from, hey, what do I want the other person to believe?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's never going to be believable to them, it's not going to work. So you almost need to,
Right.
I think it's always the best. I mean, first of all, morally, it's always best not to lie. But if you are going to lie, start backwards from, hey, this person would believe this happened. So then I can say that this happened,
Yeah.
and kind of lead in that direction. Um, it, I mean, I don't know if incepting ideas in other people's minds is the greatest plan, but if when it works really well, and we see it work really
Right.
well here for Omer. And I think he's going about it in a very. I think that shows his social acumen, right? Like he understands Mike as a person. He understands the dynamic between Mike and High so well that he can create a believable lie between them.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like it just is a testament to his game. Like
Yeah.
Omar is amazing at this game. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if people are watching and future live reality games players, I mean, I just think that that's a lesson you need to learn. Is that
yeah,
it's not about creating lies and deceptions. It's about creating believable lies and deceptions. It's about understanding the interplay between everyone, and that's why social game. You know, when people talk about, oh, this is person's a strategic player, this person's a social player, this person is that type of player. There is no way that you can ever uncouple strategic and social, in my opinion, because to be
mm,
strategic, you need to understand the social. You need to understand how these people are playing together. You need to understand how Mike and Hyde works to even make that lie work, you know? And if you don't understand that, you're going to end up what happens later in the episode, which is High going to Jonathan and telling a much worse lie. And we'll get there. But I think those two moments juxtaposed against each other are huge here, and
mm.
shows why Omer's
Or
playing
or
amazing.
you could just tell the truth and then cry about it, and then it'll all be
You can tell
fine.
the truth and cry about it. Yeah, I don't personally support that as a move, but I guess if that gets you where you need to go, it's hard for me to
Hey,
explain.
it worked for me.
So not only does Omer pull this big move, but this bonding circle allows Lindsay to open up, and she reveals to both Mike and Omer about the amulet. So she tells them the rules of the amulet, who has it, which is huge. I think
Oh my god, literally no one in the game knows about this, and
no one in the game knows about it. I think
it didn't mean anything in the entire game. So I'm excited that this came
I
up.
think it might be the longest. I think they were talking about it on the actual know-it-alls. This is the knockoff know-it-alls, but I think they were talking about
Okay,
the actual know-it-alls last week or the week before, that it might be the longest kept secret ever in Survivor. It was literally day one, moment one
it's
on the beach,
insane,
and no one has learned about it. I don't think, at least as far as we know. So it finally
right?
comes out, and I think now is a big time for it to be used in a strategic way. Of obviously the concept of the amulet is it's more powerful when these people are voted out. So there is now impetus to say, hey, I want High out of this game because it's more useful for me.
Right.
And then it becomes between now Lindsay and Drea, who gets the other person out first and gets that idol. So
Hmm.
does Drea get her idol back, or does Lindsay get her first idol? Is I think kind of the next interesting question about the amulet after tonight.
And it seemed like they were working together this episode, at least, right?
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, since the merge, they've been in that same kind of larger group together, and
Yeah.
they've had a pretty good rapport. So I'm curious, kind of who makes that first move. I think it's been somewhat clear that High was probably the first to go, but
Yeah.
I can't see who might be that second to go out of those group, because I do think eventually the allure of the idol, especially as we get to, is the idol good at final five, final six? I think you really
Right.
want it heading into that vote. So I think one of
Yeah.
them might be going soon.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that happening. And as much as I hate to say it, I could totally see it being Lindsay that goes, just because she did have no edit, and all of a sudden she's getting a lot. So it's just like sometimes that means the end.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could see it being Lindsay. I could also see it being I could see I don't want to spoil the end of the episode when we do our predictions, but I can see Drea being out next episode and Lindsay
Oh,
being actually our 0 vote finalist.
oh,
So
okay.
I could see that happening as well. So I think it could go both ways on those two, which I think is really fun because I think unfortunately this season, is semi predictable. I feel like in certain ways, but I think in that type of way, like that is intriguing me right now, is who kind of makes that first, who shoots first in that duel
Yeah.
between the two of them now that we have high out.
Hmm.
So we leave the reward and it's pretty much higher Jonathan. Everyone's talking about those two names. We go to immunity. It's higher Jonathan. We're really focused on, is one of them going to win immunity to kind of save them and make this a pretty boring episode. It's another stupid balancing challenge. I'm really sick of these.
It's
Hey,
every
Survivor,
episode.
just please. The only thing you need to take from Australian Survivor is just the concept of somewhat unique challenges, please.
Oh my god.
Like especially post
They're
merge. These post merge ones are killing me.
they're not even
It's been 10 years now of this. I can't.
they're not even trying. They're using the
No.
same thing season to season, especially from 41. They're
Mhm.
using the same things.
It's been the same beats almost. It's almost been the same order. I
Yeah.
mean this really annoyed me seeing this one again tonight. And it's also
Hmm.
just, it's one of those things just like it's one thing. It's balance. It's balance and somewhat hand-eye coordination.
Right.
It's the ball on the bow. If you haven't seen it, it's the bow. You're holding the bow, you're balancing it. It does seem like a fun one to try. Have you ever tried this one out? Have you tried to make this one, Brandon, at all?
I was gonna try and make it, and then I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah, the
So
curved wood is probably pretty
right.
hard.
Yeah. But it was
Do
on
you
my initial list.
do you think do you think you'd be good at this one? Do you have that kind of
No.
skill? No.
No, if we did balancing, I would be out first in all of them.
I think if I was standing flat on the ground, I'd probably be the best person in the world at this.
Well,
No,
did
not the best person.
did you
I won
win the
I
you
won
won the
the ball
balls
on the
and
flat plate.
the
All right,
the
don't, people could be watching this for future. Don't. I'm not that good, guys.
Cameron wins everything.
But the balance beam immediately rules me out because I would
Yeah.
not be on that for more than 10 seconds. Balance
Right.
beam, I would be out immediately. So I would be like Mike, who was shaky immediately and fell off the balance beam. He was
Yeah.
the first one out. High, we saw him struggle on the balance beam 2 weeks ago, I think, and again, second one out here. He just can't keep his balance there. Else is pretty solid. Then all of a sudden we see Romeo drop. I just want to know, it was really funny to watch Romeo lose because he's just sitting there still. The ball starts to move and just absolutely zero movement from him to try to like correct it. He just watches it fall off, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, Omer, he tries. He's balanced it back and forth. He can't keep it. He's gone. We haven't even moved the feet yet. If you remember from this challenge, Brandon, there's three
Yeah.
kind of like sections to it. We haven't even moved from the first section yet. So
Mhm.
they're doing pretty bad. Marianne is praying for that break. Jeff does the 30 seconds left, and Marianne is just so hard holding and like doing all these things. She makes it. We get to the second break, and unfortunately, she's just out of gas, and she
Yeah.
dies. She loses immediately. Almost within 30 seconds. Then we see Drea pulls a Romeo, pretty much not moving as the ball drops. I don't know why both of them did this. Maybe they were just slow to react, or I don't know how it was. It was just really funny to watch them both do that. And then we finally have this mano a mano, Lindsay v Jonathan. Kind of, it felt like it mirrored the game in that kind of Lindsay was anti Jonathan and now anti him in the challenge. So it was a really good moment. They make it to round 3. So Jonathan struggles a lot at the end of round 2, but he survives and makes it to round 3. Now the platform is really small. There's a whole thing about how his feet barely even fit on the platform. So it's hard to even get him started. And it seemed pretty much from the get-go that Lindsay was going to take this one, and she does. So we get the big episode from Lindsay. But the kind of key thing here that I wanted to know, I mean, just people who have seen me host the last one, I do like to point these things out. I'm not a big edit guy or edit guy, but Mike gets that post-challenge confessional, which is, people say is the holy grail of confessionals, the biggest thing. He gets that post-immunity confessional and says, the king will be dethroned tonight, in reference to High. He says High thinks he's running the show, but the king will be dethroned tonight. So we get that big confessional from Mike, which I think was a good moment for him. And now we get to the scramble. So I'll run through the scramble quick, and then I want your opinion on. Did you see any of the scramble actually before we get to it? I know you said you saw
Just
final. You saw tribal.
tribal.
Okay.
Just
All right.
tribal.
So I'll read you through the scramble, and then I want to get your opinion on: do you think people were making the right reads, or do you think where you would have gone if you were in this game? So
Mhm.
um, hmm, I wrote wins or get second. I don't know. Sorry, my notes weren't written very well either tonight. But we have uh, Jonathan losing is perfect for what I think is the high blind side here. So
Right.
Jonathan losing makes it so that high feels like there's an obvious target,
Yeah.
and it makes it so easy to feed him kind of this obvious thing. Hey, he's a gigantic Thor of a human being, right? John of Thor, and he's just so easy to kind of be as the, hey, we're not going to let him win. He's the easy target. We're going to have a safe vote. We're going to play
Yeah.
to the odd number, which is then the time to make the move. We're not going to make the move on the even number, and
Mhm.
we're going to vote with you. Um, so High tells this to Mike. Mike immediately then goes to Jonathan, tells Jonathan that. He also tells Jonathan that High has no idol, which comes into play a little bit later. Drea and Lindsay, we see them putting their heads together and talking, who again have a reason to trust and not trust each other.
Right.
They're both leaning high. They laugh about the amulet. They say, they. I think this is now the third or fourth time we've had kind of a scene end with Drea somewhat cackling about
Cackling. Oh
somewhat
my
of like an
god.
evil thing, and I love it. I love it
It's
for
so
her.
good.
It's so fun. I think kind of this mini Drea villain edit is great. I support it so hard. And we get Marianne coming up to Lindsay saying she wants High as well, and Lindsay's like, well, I'm not going to push for Jonathan if everyone seems to want High, so it is what it is. To me, I wrote this seems too easy. I was a little worried, like, hey, are they going to throw out something at the last minute?
Right.
High
Because
then
had
tries
you
to make.
had you heard anything from Omer yet at this point?
We
Because
haven't heard from Omer at all. No, we
okay, because
haven't heard from Omer at all.
usually it's like, oh, this is what we're doing, and then Omer's like,
Right. So I was like, this seems a little too easy. Is there going to be like a little twist? And so,
yeah,
but then we have this scene, which I think just really was kind of the nail, and I feel like High almost got like a mini Drew Christie edit this episode a little bit, of like he then tries to make this really like 3D chess move here of going to Jonathan and saying, he says to us as a confessional, every week I'm going to the person who's going voted out, and my job is to make them feel comfortable so they don't play the shot in the dark. So he goes to Jonathan, he's sitting by the fire and says, hey, it's not going to be you tonight. Don't worry, you're safe. No matter what, you're safe. I'll tell you when people leave. And people leave. And then he tells Jonathan, I found the idol. So they played the idols last time. I found it. It was at the water well. I have it. I'm going to play it for you to protect you because I do not want you going home. So I'll play it for you. Says he's voting for Romeo and claims that he found the idol. Jonathan says, great. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Immediately, Jonathan goes to Omer, tells him this story. And Jonathan, for his credit, Jonathan said he sees right through it. He says, I didn't believe that for a second. I didn't believe that he had the idol. Maybe it's because Mike already told him that, High didn't have the idol. I don't
right.
know. I don't know where
I
if
feel
that
like he
comes into
would.
play.
I feel like he would believe Mike over High, so
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I thought for someone who was, had spent the whole last episode, not understanding how an idol flush works. I thought it was
Right.
pretty interesting that he immediately saw through High's lie. I think that maybe goes to tell a little bit how bad High's lie was. And I think juxtaposing those two lies, like I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
Omer's lie, make a good lie, a believable lie, rather than something like this, which was clearly,
Right.
not believable. A lie for lying's sake is not useful. So this is, if
Hmm.
you're planning to go out there and live reality games, this is an example of not to do. It was pretty bad. It was clearly read through, even by one of the worst players out there. So,
Hmm.
not good. We see Omer end his conversation with Jonathan and says, "It's almost too perfect. This is too easy. Everyone wants High." And so he Omer gives a little smirk to the camera of like afterwards, which I thought was pretty funny. Just like, I don't know, they keep doing him a little things like that. And now Omer's torn. He's like, well, everyone wants High. Is this too easy? Should I keep High? High likes me. Jonathan's a threat. Maybe I should just go for Jonathan. And so we see a little bit of him thinking of Jonathan. He goes to Lindsay and says, hey, if I had to choose right now, I might choose Jonathan. Like he's a bigger threat. Um, and then we see a little bit of a montage of everyone loving Omer. So we see Romeo tell him, I don't know what's going on, but I don't trust anyone but you to Omer. We see Lindsay have a moment with him. We see Mike have a moment with him. A little tiny montage of just everyone loving Omer. Um, can you speak to? I mean, you've seen this thing,
Shady.
and I think you've seen, not this episode, but you've seen all the other episodes, and I would liken as someone who played a very similar game of the concept of just everyone was kind of drawn to you, whether it's some sort of personal magnetism or kind of outwardly whatever you're putting out. But can you speak to what you feel like Omer has specifically done to kind of have as good a social game as he actually has?
Oh gosh. I mean, they never show social games, so it's hard to know exactly what he is doing, but I mean, we've seen people connect with him on a personal level in a few episodes prior to this one, like with Mike, specifically about his religion. Like he's connected really well with people and like been open about different parts of his life. So I feel like he's just a very personable person, and he just, I don't know, I guess he just comes off as very trustworthy. Um so everyone is gravitated towards him. Like from a viewer's perspective, you're like, what the fuck? Why is everyone trusting Omar? But like I guess when you're there, like you have no idea. So I don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it is intangible, and the show definitely doesn't, like you said, do a great job of highlighting what it is that makes these people what they are. And I mean, I think to a certain extent, it's a superpower in the same way that Jonathan has the innate ability to probably dominate a challenge. I mean, it's one of those. It's an unteachable aspect. I'm sure it's those intangibles of just something about Omer makes him seem safe, trustworthy, comforting, fun to be around. I mean, those are the
Yeah.
things like having watched you play. I would love to learn it is like the making everything fun. I mean, it's not always fun out there, right? I mean, it's even in 4 days, it can be somewhat of a torture. And in 27 days, I'm sure it's worse. And in 39 days, I'm sure it's even worse. So I
Yeah.
think making things fun is a big thing, making things light and not seeming threatening. I don't think anyone thinks that Omer's in charge, even though clearly from
Right.
the viewer's perspective, probably in charge. But people think High's in charge. People think Mike's in charge. People think Jonathan's in charge. So
Yeah.
letting those other people. I mean, can you speak to letting maybe the other people position themselves as in charge, even though you might be pulling other strings in the background? Like, how much patience does that take?
Um I don't, it's been so long since since we played. But I don't know, cuz I definitely was never perceived to be in charge when we played Surviving Maine, and I, based on watching it back, I was like, "Oh, I guess I did kind of deserve to win maybe a little bit more than I thought I did." But like everyone thought Jazzy was like HBIC, like she was making all the decisions, she was doing everything. So it was, I mean, it was so easy to hide behind her because like she was the kingpin of our tribe. Um, so I don't know. I think it is slightly different just because she was so high up on a pedestal that it was so easy for the rest of us just to not do anything. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, like I would agree with you. I mean, I think we both use that same tactic of, hey, we have a big kind of quote unquote, I mean, not shield in a way, but also like a figurehead
Yeah.
to a certain extent. And I think that's really useful. And I think um but I think more what I want to hit on is the patience of maybe not being perceived as in control, because you get close to the end of that game and you're really worried about, hey, what is
It's
my resume going to be? How am I going to argue that I had
right.
agency when everyone thought this other person was maybe in control, or maybe this? So can you speak to that a little bit? Because I feel like that's really the key here between Hai and Omer, is that like
Yeah, yeah,
Hai
yeah.
really wanted to be in control. Omer is fine not being perceived in control.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see how Omer plays the end game if he's perceived as not being in control. Because yes, okay, now I understand it. So like for me, like I didn't really try and become in control until the end game. And then it backfired and it didn't work. So I ended up on the bottom. So I'm wondering how Omer plays that. Um and like you said before, like the final 9 through 6, it's super important because you want to set yourself up with the right people at the end game, where either you know you can beat them at the end, or you know you have options for getting other people out. So yeah, having a good social game, like, you have to be patient. Because if you're not, then you'll end up like Kai and you'll overplay, or you'll end up like every other player that gets like 8th, 7th, 6th place and you overplay. But it is hard because, I mean, when we got to final 6, I think it was 6, it was like, oh shit, I need to do something. And then you try too hard and then it backfires.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I think Mike had a quote this episode. He said something about how, you know, I let High think he's in charge because everyone who's been in charge has got their throat slit. And I think that's a good quote for this season. It's a good quote for Survivor in general. Is that like, and I don't know if it's necessarily a great quote for this season because I
I
don't know
don't think
necessarily, like,
so.
looking at the boot list, Tori, Roxroy, Chanel, it really
They were
hasn't
never
been
in
the case.
control. Yeah.
That said, I think it is in general a pretty good quote for
Yeah.
Survivor, in that, it's that kind of the tallest nail is going to get the hammer, the tallest weed's going to get cut, whatever that idiom that I'm trying to think of is. The person who stands out is going to stand out. And it is, I mean, Survivor really is that tightrope of balancing the concept of, I need to have enough control to make sure that I survive these votes and get to the end, but not too much control that I'm voted out,
Yeah.
but also enough control that when I get to the end, I can say, these are things that I've done, or these are reasons why I'm here, and I had autonomy and not was dragged here. So
Yeah.
it's a really tricky position. And like you just said earlier, I agree with you. With High gone, I'm really curious where Omer goes, because there isn't that many places to hide. Obviously, there's Jonathan and Mike still.
But honestly, like, I mean, we see Mike as like a figurehead. Are they seeing Mike as a figurehead? Because he never comes up in conversation as being a target. Um, so I'm wondering if they even see him as that.
Yeah, I think Mike and Omer are playing more similar games than maybe we're giving them credit for here. Of like, they're both beloved out there, and they're both
Right.
the type of person. And I think Mike might be the next hurdle for Omer. And I think he really
Yeah.
just he might have just traded one hurdle for another.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas maybe he should have kept High and gone after Mike.
Yeah, because like High isn't I
High isn't
loved him this
beloved.
season, but he wasn't that good. It just
I
in
don't think he
turn
was
like he
beloved on the island. Like,
right,
in the sense that, like, if Mike gets to the end, I think it's gonna be hard for people not to vote for him. People
right,
just have that kind of like love for him, that almost like Tony, like, immediate respect for him just as like a person. Like, I think
right.
he has that in him. So yeah, I would agree. So we get to tribal. I'll do the same thing. I'll just run through tribal really quickly, and then we'll talk
Okay.
about this is what you've seen, and then we'll talk about, did
Yeah.
everyone make the right decision here. So it's easier tribal than the last time I was on, because last time we had all those stupid car metaphors. This time we have very few metaphors, so I don't have to explain anything.
I feel
We
like
have.
they've been doing a lot of weird metaphors this
I didn't
season
love the metaphor
specifically.
this one either. My my girlfriend loved the metaphor. We'll talk about it, but we had Lindsay asked about the reward fallout, and she said, I tried. She gave a pretty diplomatic answer and said there was no fallout. Mike lied to the group and said there was no strategy on the reward. He was just happy to be warm, and he gave his whole as a firefighter. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lindsay said, Survivor, we're crazy to play Survivor. These are some of the worst days of your life, but also you have some of the highest highs, which I think is, as a Survivor fan and as people who love to do the live reality games, kind of a fun quote to highlight, just as something that, it is tough out there. It's hard, it's tough, but that is
Yeah.
sometimes the most rewarding thing out there, is kind of suffering through some of those tough days.
Yeah.
um Jeff asks High, is that possible? Do you believe that they didn't speak any strategy? And High says, no, that's BS. Obviously, they talk strategy, but we're all talking strategy. He gives this metaphor, which again, my girlfriend loved, I hated. He says, we're all long distance runners with blindfolds on. We don't know who's tripping ahead of us or who's slowing down or anything like that. We're just trying to run as fast as we can. What do you think about this metaphor? As someone who's played, hosted many games, online games, live games, what do you think about that metaphor? Does that mean anything?
No. Where are these metaphors? Where are these metaphors coming from? Do they literally sit them down in confessionals and say, "Oh my god, you really need to think of a metaphor for tribal tonight, or we're not going to put you in the episode"? Like,
I mean,
why does everyone always have a weird ass metaphor that makes no sense?
I mean, I would say that that is my one complaint about High is that I think he specifically at Tribal Council is aiming for that. Like he wants to be
He
I
wants to
don't
be
know.
Aubrey.
He wants
Aubrey
to be
was
Aubrey
like,
or Zeke or someone who's giving
yeah,
that kind of like soundbite at every tribal, and I just don't know if he's got it. He
no.
doesn't have. He's not the David Wright. He's not going to be hired to write for like an actual TV show. Like he doesn't have that it factor a little bit. Some of these metaphors just fall a little short for me, but just teasing him. He's had a great season. And I do love him as a character.
Yeah.
I want to highlight this. Benjamin Snyder talks about most rewarding thing about a live reality game is meeting new people. I know two people met on a live reality game and now they're married. Just want to highlight the concept. Yeah, like meeting new people. I wouldn't know Brandon at all.
It's
This
me
is
and
why we're here.
Cam. Me and Cam. We're
Okay, whoa. Nicholas is gonna get pretty mad if he hears that. So
yeah,
careful. So then
we won't start any rumors.
we jump to Omer, and I think again between High and Omer has been to me almost the theme of the editing since the merge. I think last time I was on, I talked about how in the merge episode, High had that confessional that you talked about earlier this episode, that confessional of, hey, players, get what they want in this game. Good players get what they want in this game. And that was like his last confessional heading into tribal. And then we
Right.
immediately saw Omer get what he wanted and not High.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
now this episode, we have kind of this confessional of, High, and we have the juxtaposition of their two lies, and then we have the juxtaposition of their two tribal council performances, which is High talking about kind of, we're all blind, blah, 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 blah. And then Omer talking about, and I think he phrased this really importantly. He says, you need to coast. You can't lead the whole way through. There's no way you can lead, from beginning to end in a Survivor game. The thing that you need to be careful of is decisions. Every decision you're making, whether it is to coast, whether it is to not, is a choice, and those choices have unintended consequences. And I think the person who can think through those unintended consequences, is the person that's going to win this game. What do you think about those kind of answers there? I saw you shaking your head there a second, so I want to give you the opportunity to speak.
I mean, I feel like that's one of those answers that you shouldn't say at tribal council. Like that's his game. So like he literally just laid out like this is how I'm playing the game. And I always think like when people are answering at tribal, like, why the fuck did you say that?
Well, the jury's there. He needs
Oh,
to lay
that's
these. He
fair.
might need to lay
That
these
is
seeds
fair.
early. Like if
Yeah.
if if he's not being perceived as the leader, he needs to start
Yeah.
laying the seed that I'm doing that
That's
on purpose early on. Maybe
yeah.
maybe that's why he's saying that.
That makes sense. But I mean, it makes sense. Like it's better than High's metaphor. It no, I mean that's. I feel like a lot of winners. That's. I'm not saying Omar's gonna win. I hope he does, but I feel like a lot of winners have that same trajectory of like, oh, I'm in charge this round, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take a back seat now, and then I'm in charge again, and I'm gonna take a back seat. So I feel like it it's a smart way to play. You don't want to, you can't, unless you're Kim Spradlin, you can't be in charge every single round of the game.
Even Kim, I think she was in charge. We knew she was in charge, but I don't
Right.
think the cast knew she was in charge. I
That's
think
fair.
that's maybe the difference here is like watching the season. Yeah, you can see in Redemption Island, everyone knew Rob was in charge, or watching
Right.
One World, everyone watching knew Kim was in charge. But I don't know. You can't make, I mean, obviously there's just that like distinction of does the rest of the people out there know that she's in charge? I don't know if they
Right.
do every episode. And I want to speak to you. I mean, how do you manage that? I know that's not necessarily the type of game that you played at all, but like having played a game, having been out there with people, how do you go about kind of taking a backseat? Because there's only 8 people, and there's not much of a
Right.
backseat to take, so how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, it just. I mean, I feel like your social game at the beginning of the game really matters towards the end of the game, so that can take a back seat and people are um, doing what you want them to do without knowing that you want them to do it. I guess I feel like you are better to answer this question because you were in charge for a lot of surviving Maine. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that, and then I'll point to this question that I'm highlighting here before. So, I mean, to me, I think it's one of those things of, I think it's what Omer did tonight, which is get the decision that you want, but make it someone else's decision. I think
Yeah.
that's so get the answer that you want. So figure out who you want out next. Make that someone else's decision though. So, when we
Right.
were out there playing, like at Final Seven, for instance, I wanted Jess out. I made
Mm-hmm.
that someone else's decision. I talked to Jazzy. I made that her decision. Of like, hey, like she wants that person out. You
Yeah.
need to make and that's about reading that social game like we were talking about before. You need to make sure that other people will agree to this plan, and then if you can make that other people's plans, that's way better for you than leading that plan. Because if you're out there
Right.
pushing it too hard, then you're in that Romeo spot of it feels so desperate when he's trying to push a plan or something like that since the
Right.
merge, and you're in that spot of being that guy who's just pushing a plan. You need to come to people with a plan that they're already going to take and run with as their own, and I think
Yeah.
that's the way to go about it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this as a counter to, most winners, can take a back seat? Do you think there was an instance where Rob and Amber ever took a back seat in All Stars? It's been a minute. I don't know the last time you watched through All Stars,
Oh
but that
God.
was an interesting thought experiment.
It's been a while. Because I've like rewatched almost all the seasons. But All Stars is one where like I don't know if I have rewatched it because I don't love it. I I mean, I feel like at the very, very beginning, they weren't necessarily in charge, but as the game went, they were pretty much in charge the whole
Yeah.
the
I mean,
whole
I think
time.
I would say that maybe they did a good job making Alicia and Tom both feel like they had agency.
Right.
That would be my only
Because
thing is that you you
they were
you
with
can't.
Jenna and Rupert.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Did they have Final Fours with both
They had
duos?
Final Fours with both duos. They kind of pulled the kind of
The thing you did in my
Denise
online
and
game.
sure, yeah. Yep. I did that exact thing. Yep. Yeah. Very, very much so. I think it's a very Denise and Malcolm move too. I think they kind of pulled the same thing in Philippines where, if you're a duo, if you can pair with other duos,
Right.
it's a very even alliance because
Hmm.
both sides think that they're in control. But if you're a duo who's paired with both sides, then you're actually in control. You become that swing vote
Yeah.
as like kind of a pair. So I don't know. I don't know if we disproved it with Rob and Amber, but I think that at least the goal, even if you're not in control, is to make the cast feel like they're in control. So I think they made both sides. They made Jenna and they made Tom and Alicia kind of feel like they were in control. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
counter. All right. So we then have all right. One last thing about kind of this juxtaposition thing is we have the high quote, we have the Omer quote, and then immediately they go to Mike, the three main characters of this season so far.
Hmm.
And we have High kind of talking, just kind of a silly metaphor and kind of talking, circles around himself. We have Omer being really clear and concise about what like I feel like is a great strategy. And then we have Mike, who the question is, who do you take out and when? And he talks about gut feeling. And I think just the three answers really describe who they are as players perfectly. How do you
Hmm.
feel like Mike is playing? Like, do you feel like there's more strategy behind what he's saying, or do you feel like he's really playing with emotion?
Um, I mean, I do feel like he's playing with his gut. Because I mean, he has been convinced to vote out everyone from his original tribe. He's the last one. So he's not necessarily like making decision. I mean, from our standpoint, he is one of the main characters of the season. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can see why people wouldn't think he's a big contributor to the game because he's the last one left from his original tribe. He has voted out all of them because other people have told him to. Um, so, so like logically, I don't know. Logically, he's not in a good spot right
Yeah, it's tough to
now.
tell. I mean, you have to counteract it with just how much people like him, and I
Right.
think that puts you in a good spot. And I think people like him in the game, people like him on the jury. He's one of those people that if they get to the end, he's the Janet, he's the person that
Right.
if they make it to the end. I just really don't see a jury not rewarding him as like a all around good person who played a
Hmm.
solid game. Like there's no knocks against him. Maybe he's not the most strategic person counting every number, but he is playing a solid strategic game, doing the things that he needs to do. But I thought those three quotes in a row were very intriguing representations of them as players.
Right.
We get Marianne talking about Survivor Jenga. Then we get Lindsay talking about the vote is going to even the playing field. And obviously, we then cut to Jonathan. And is this about him? This is the kind of the viewer fake out. Is this about him? And
This is
I
when
don't
I
even know if he
started.
fully put that together.
So this is when I started watching, and when I
Yeah,
was watching, I was like, "Oh shit, Lindsay's going against Jonathan," because like I had
right.
no prior knowledge of what was happening. So I definitely thought it was gonna be Jonathan.
It got me thinking. It definitely, like I mean, what they do the edits, they make you think between two people, and this was like,
Right,
that definitely is an answer that could be very attributed to Jonathan, evening the playing
right,
field, making it feel fair, is what she said. And yeah, like Jonathan does sometimes feel unfair when you get to those challenges and things like that. But at the same point, it depends on what you value and what you're scared of most, which is what High is talking about. So High answers that and says,
right.
depends on what you're scared of and what you're scared of and what you value most. And now I want to throw that to you. Answer High's question. What are you most scared of when you're talking about, either what do you value most as an ally, and what are you scared of most as like an alternative player?
I feel like what do I value most as an ally? I mean, to be honest, I worked with the people in Surviving Maine who I just liked the most, who I felt most comfortable with. Okay, so that's a good thing. Is like who you feel the most comfortable with. Like if you don't feel comfortable with someone, you're not gonna fucking want to work with them.
Yeah.
And I feel like you kind of are the answer to both sides of that for me. Is like I felt comfortable with you, but at the same time, you were more strategic than me. So if I played again, I wouldn't want to work with someone like you because of how strategic you were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Just everyone watching, ignore what let's
Ignore.
do the Men in Black thing in case you ever see me out there. Uh, no, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think what you said the first part is just like you want to work with the people that you like the most, and I think that just really speaks to the choice potentially. If the group cast was making a choice between Mike and High, why Mike is here and why High is not is just that like yes, High is a valuable member in an alliance because he's got his head on his shoulders and wants to do kind of the normal right things that you want to do in Survivor, but you just trust Mike more. And there's something intangible about why you're trusting Mike more and why you like him more and why you want to be around him more. And that's why Mike is the last member standing from this green tribe. And I think you pointed to it well there, is that even in the final 8 of a game, you're thinking of kind of who it is a little bit of a popularity contest. It is a little bit about who you like more and things like that. And that is really hard sometimes to come across because it is such a strategic X's and O's game. But I think there is that kind of um, emotional aspect that's you can never cut
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you feel like you can like before you do play, but then you're out there and you're like, fuck, I can't. I cannot cut the like personal connections and the emotional side of literally a single vote.
Yeah, it's impossible to compartmentalize those things, right? Like
Yeah,
because even when you're thinking of, oh, is this good for me? Your brain is tricking you and thinking, hey, well, it is good for me to keep this person because I like them, but
right,
like secretly that might be a bad strategic thing.
right.
And we see that happen a lot on Survivor. I feel like where people are keeping people too long, and I mean
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll get to my predictions later, but I think people are feeling that way about maybe Mike and Omer. A little bit too much right now. Of like, hey, we'll keep them around because they're useful, but I mean, I don't know. Like I sometimes it's
yeah,
better to kind of do that strategy of the Boston Rob strategy of keep the Philip around. It's like it's better to
yeah,
keep the person people don't like around. Like sometimes these people that everyone like the Mikes and the Omers and things like that, you got to get them out a little earlier.
yeah. You got to go to the end with Nora every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. That type of person. Not yeah, exactly. So then we get to the vote. We get hi Jonathan, hi. That's 5. That's enough. He's voted out. We see High votes for Jonathan, and we see the second vote for Jonathan is Romeo. I'm curious. Do you
Is
think
anyone
Romeo?
shocked?
Do you think Romeo was included at all, and maybe voted as like
No.
a secondary measure of like the shot in the dark, or you think he was not included at all? No one told him that it was High.
I mean, depend based on the past, I'm going to assume that he was left out. But
Yeah,
I'm sure if he was included, we will get that at the beginning of the next episode.
I would be very curious because we specifically got the moment of Romeo talking to Omer saying, I don't trust anybody but you. And it felt like not like a big moment, but it felt like important that they included that. And so to me, I would be really curious of why they would leave that moment in and then immediately have Omer lie to Romeo, because he's
Right.
obviously going to know, well, Hai was the only other person that could have voted with me.
Right.
So Omer, you lied to me and voted for Hai. Like
It,
I wonder if potentially he was, hey, I'm gonna throw one extra vote just in case of the shot in the dark or something like that. Like I don't know,
yeah.
but I
I
could
mean,
see it
it
going
makes
both ways.
sense. It totally makes sense, just in case.
Yeah.
Because he did vote Jonathan as opposed to like a random person.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't like he didn't vote for. And the other thing is that he threw the vote for High 2 episodes ago. He's the one that wants to vote for High. So it's the other
Right.
thing is like I feel like if he were to throw a vote, it makes almost the most sense to throw it at High for him. So I'm curious how they reveal that next week. So we get the next time on Survivor. Unfortunately, it seems like they're gonna do the do or die twist
uh
again, which
yeah.
just like
But also like
miss me with these twists that they're doing again.
there's no way it works 2 seasons in a row. So like
Well, if
you
you again, I mean,
know
we talked through this. I think we were on the episode
I
last
think we
year. That
were.
was the one we talked through the odds. It is if they know the math problem, more than likely that they'll be safe if they do it correctly. But we'll see if they do it correctly. 66% chance if they do it. We'll see. The other things that I wanted to know from the thing, it looks like Mike and Lindsay may be connecting together. That's a connection we saw today, and Romeo and Drea may be linking back up together. They did show a quick scene of them potentially linking back up together. I think that is a pair that is kind of we haven't talked about in terms of,
I
hey,
feel like
it's final
they
seven. Could they come back together and
I
work it
feel like
out?
they almost have to because you have 4 orange still and 3 other people.
Yeah,
So like they really don't have
right.
other options at this
Yeah,
point.
so where do you see this game going? Like you said, we have four orange, we have Mike is the only remaining green, and we have the two blues in Romeo and Drea. So where do you see this game going from here?
Oh, I feel like it's going just in terms of I guess the edit. I feel like they're going to do the opposite of last season. So I do feel like a high profile player is going to win as opposed to a sleeper. So I don't think we'll see one of the more irrelevant players win this season just because I don't think they'd do that twice in a row. So I do feel like I think Mike's going to win. And I don't
Wow.
necessarily want him to win, but I feel like he will. I don't know. I could see Omer getting voted out soon. I don't know. I'm so up in the
Hey.
air. I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have I'm gonna have you put the
I
game
keep
is
changing my mind.
we're gonna predict everything, but we can talk through it first. I mean, to me, Final Seven, right, is like the classic Survivor make a big move. I gotta stress, I can't hate more that they're putting
That
the
they
do or
do the
die
do
at
or die
Final
to
Seven.
it.
Why
That's
are they
even
doing
worse.
that at Final Seven? Removing
The best
strategy from
round.
the best vote of Survivor. Final Seven to me is bar none the best vote of Survivor. It is what sets up that end game. It's what we talked about before. You set up that final six of people that you can either work with or you give yourself flexibility or people that you can beat. Final seven is that really last chance to kind of remove maybe the second best threat of the game. You see people get voted out at seven. I feel like Andrea's been voted out at seven. I don't know. I'm blanking on others, but like if you look at people who voted out at seven, it's those people that are like could win the game were they to get to the end. It is
Yeah.
that person. And I think adding the do or die is just really pisses me off because it ruins that vote. Now, to me, were there
Oh,
no do or die, I would say Drea or Mike goes at this vote. Like I think those are kind of the last two big, big players aside from maybe Jonathan. Jonathan could be kind of the easy default vote because he got through the eight. I was kind
yeah.
of coming into this maybe expecting him to be the eight. But I want to play this game
Yeah.
with you of let's predict seven through one. We'll go one by one.
Oh no.
We'll
Oh
write it
no.
down. We'll see who's closest.
Oh,
If you'll get points for whatever one you get right. I'll write it down in like a little sheet.
okay.
So we'll start episode by episode. And if Kirk invites us back for the finale, we'll come back and score it on the finale.
Oh god. Okay.
All right, so we have the final seven. Who do you think is going out at the final seven? Or if you prefer, if it's more fair, I can go first on each round.
Um I'm trying to read too far into the edit right now, like who's gotten the do or die edit. I'm going to say Marianne gets 7th.
Marianne. Ooh, I do think that is someone who is like, as a viewer, heartbroken if she gets do or died next episode. Like, she plays with such great energy, emotion. Last time I was on, we got the episode where she was talking about how, she had cried when she was and guilted everyone when she was giving up, rice, or giving up immunity for rice, and
Yeah.
then said, "Hey, they never said you couldn't play with emotion, just use it." And I thought that was a great vote. So yeah, I think that's a great person. I'm gonna say next episode. I think that's the episode we lose Drea. That's
Mm.
that's where we lose Drea. I think maybe not a do or die, but I think that's where we lose Drea.
I mean, with all of her
So that's the
stuff,
thing.
it
Do
would
you feel
be.
like so is that leading to her, like, I feel like all of that stuff is either leading towards, either she uses it and it helps someone else's game, she uses it and it helps her own game, or she doesn't use it and gets blindsided. Like, where do you think that that's leading?
I think it's either leading to the do or die, which is what
Yeah.
you suggested, or it's leading to a losing fire.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna help.
Yeah.
I don't think she has a winning, even with all of this stuff, I don't think she has a winning hand right now.
All
I
right.
love
What
her
about,
though.
all right, so
She's
you
one of
have,
my favorites.
I agree. So you have Marianne at 7. Who do you have going out at 6 then?
Oh, I honestly forgot who Romeo.
Romeo. Romeo at 6.
Missing someone? That's not good.
I'm also gonna go with Romeo at 6, actually. I think that makes the most sense. Once Dre is out, he has no blue allies for me. I just think he is kind of the odd man out at 6 at that point. So that makes sense to me. What do you have at 5?
Oh, I forget. I figured out who I was missing and I don't agree anymore. Um I have Drea at 5.
Drea at 5. I have Mike at 5. So I think we kind of agree on the concept of that vote, is that kind of that last chance before fire making to get rid of a major threat. Drea at 5 is a little surprising. I don't know how the idol, like, when it lasts. Generally it lasts to 5, but with fire making, maybe
She
they have
have
other
an
stuff.
idol?
No, she doesn't have an idol. You're right. Yeah, so she has the other tricks in her bag. So maybe, but she
What?
could she could steal an idol if she knows of one. She could steal Mike's idol again. So we that is
Right.
that is in play. So maybe
Right.
that's more what it is. Yeah, I don't know, something like that. I have Mike going at that spot. I just feel like it's one of those things where they're all going to finally get wise to, hey, if this guy ever gets close to the end, he is going to win this jury over, and we need to
Hmm.
get him out. Who do you have losing fire, finishing 4th place?
Jonathan.
Jonathan. So I'm going back to my prediction from earlier this episode about talking about fire making. And yes, I know Justin mentioned it was High and Jonathan, but who
Mhm.
called it a fire making challenge was Marianne. And so I
Yeah.
do think it'll be now my theory is that it's going to be Jonathan and Marianne in fire, and I think Marianne's going to lose fire to Jonathan.
Mm.
So I have
Okay.
her going out in 4th.
Yeah.
Who do you have finishing 3rd place as a probably no votes finalist?
I agreed with you and I put Lindsay.
Lindsay.
And then I have an iconic final 2.
I'm not doing the math on who you have left out, but I am then going to say Jonathan beats Marianne in fire, gets to the end, gets no votes. So I have Jonathan as my no votes finalist, kind of playing the Xander role of
Mhm.
41 almost.
Yeah.
All right, who is your final 2 then?
Omar and Mike.
Omar and Mike. In what order do you have them in?
I have Mike winning.
Mike winning, so you have Omar coming up just short.
I would
And
just
Mike
like to
winning.
say that Omar would deserve to win, but I have Mike winning.
Okay. I find it hard to believe that Mike loses a jury vote. So I
Right.
agree if he gets there. No matter what Omer does, it's hard to see him losing. I could see Omer, if he were to do that at this point, is getting the Aubrey edit of, hey, you did everything possible that you
Yeah.
could do, but just ran up against someone with an amazing social game. I think it.
Yeah.
I think it fits that criteria of what we're seeing. I mean, Mike has that social game, same as Michelle. It's like a superpower at a certain point. Those people that just
And
talk
they're
to
both
people.
from New Jersey.
They're both from New Jersey. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just
I
people from New Jersey. People love that personality, I guess.
I googled how many people have won from New Jersey while we were talking,
It's a
and there
lot.
have been 4. So
Well, Tony twice.
Tony twice, Michelle and Jeremy. So I
They counted Jeremy?
think so. Wait,
Jeremy's from
let me
Cambridge.
hold please. Maybe it wasn't him.
Natalie.
Is Natalie from Jersey?
Natalie
Hold,
Anderson, I think, lived in Jersey. I think that's.
Okay.
Is that right?
The article doesn't say. It just
Oh.
says that there have been 3.
I think it's Natalie Anderson. I think because I think it was an all Jersey final 3 in Winners at War, technically.
Okay.
All right. Well, I agree with you a little bit. I do think Omer makes the final 2. I have
Mhm.
Omer beating Lindsay. I think Lindsay might steal a vote or 2 as kind of the female representative on the cast. The cast hasn't seen last season, I think, so they don't know that a woman just won.
Yeah.
Lindsay has also played a great game and deserves votes, but I also think that there's just like a huge impetus to kind of try to push that across the finish line because they don't know that Erica just won. But I think Omer just played a little bit better game. I think it could be a close vote between them because they played the whole game together, and I think Omer steals it. So I have
I would
Drea.
absolutely love that final 2.
Yeah, I think that would be I think Lindsay would also. I think based on how we've seen her kind of do confessionals and things like that, the way that she would speak at Final Tribal would be very, I think, entertaining. I think she would really give herself a great shot. I don't think she's going to sell herself short at all. So we have Drea for me, Romeo, Mike, Marianne, Jonathan, Lindsay, Omer winning. You have Marianne, Romeo, Drea, Jonathan, Lindsay, Omer, Mike. I'll figure out some sort of scoring to see who wins because I'm sure it's going to be close, but I think it's fun to make the predictions. And that's that. Do you have any last plugs for Can You Survive? Remind everyone the dates so they can check out so that they can get on the YouTube or Facebook and YouTube.
We will be live streaming August 3rd through 7th. That's a Wednesday through Sunday. So you can follow us on Facebook to get those updates and to follow the live streams. Yeah, and we actually, fun fact, we won't be live streaming everything this year because some of it will be saved for the episode. So some of it will be kept a secret.
Okay, that's exciting. That's exciting. So you will have to wait for the episodes. I think it'll be well worth it. Season 1 was amazing gameplay. Everyone that I've seen be cast for season 2 equal to or better than the season. I don't know. That's rude to say to season 1, but I just think that we have a good cast of people. I'm excited to see kind of what chaos ensues, especially with, like you said, the amount of people that you have. And then I think that, like you said earlier, that you kind of go low on the twists. One of the things I've talked about before, when I've had a chance on this channel, is that the more twists you give, the less people play, and the less twists you give, the more people play. And so you see that strategy come to fruition. So I'm excited to see these people get out there and hit the field in August, like you said, this year. And then, if you guys are interested, please apply for the seasons next year. I highly recommend it. One of the best games out there.
And
Again,
Cameron and Alicia will be in charge of casting for the single season, so the regular season, and I'll be in charge of casting for the Blood versus Water
Brandon
season.
said he's letting me be in control of all the twists too, so maybe I'll have some things up in my sleeve. So we'll see. Or Alicia's got some crazy things that she has planned. Also check out Surviving Maine, happening Memorial Day weekend. If you're in Maine, stop by, lend a helping hand, or just be a spectator and check out the last season on YouTube. And lastly, watch everything else that Live Reality Games is putting out. These people are amazing. Thank you to Kirk. Thank you to Dustin. Thank you to Naomi. Everyone else that's putting on things on this channel. It's just really cool. A great community, super welcoming. Great to kind of bring these live games to life and make everyone feel like stars and live kind of our survivor dreams or live reality dreams. So appreciate it and have a good night, everyone.
See ya.